Merry Christmas.
It had been 2 months since the fateful Halloween night, when Tony Stark had nearly succumbed to Dracula's curse. Though he had managed to avert disaster, something within him had shifted. For weeks, he had been more reclusive than usual, avoiding social gatherings and retreating into his work. Stark Tower, usually buzzing with activity during the holiday season, was eerily quiet. The bright, festive lights and decorations that typically adorned every corner were nowhere to be found. Normally, Tony would have been in the thick of planning his annual Christmas party by now, the biggest event of the year, filled with friends, celebrities, and the Avengers themselves. But this year, Tony wasn't sure he even wanted to celebrate Christmas. The events of Halloween still haunted him, a reminder of how close he had come to losing control, and the fear that something else could go wrong weighed heavily on his mind. In his lab, Tony tinkered with a new suit, the soft glow of holographic displays casting shadows across the room. His concentration was broken by the soft click of the door opening. Pepper Potts entered, tablet in hand, looking concerned as she glanced around the undecorated lab. "Tony," she began, "it's 5 days until Christmas, and you haven't even sent out the invites for the party." Tony didn't look up from his work. "I'm not sure I'm in the party mood this year, Pep." Pepper sighed, moving closer. "This isn't like you. Christmas is your thing, Tony. You love it." He paused, the soft whir of the tools in his hand coming to a stop. "It's just, after what happened at Halloween, I don't know. What if something goes wrong again?" Pepper placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice gentle but firm. "You can't let one bad night ruin the whole season. You made it through Halloween just fine, saved everyone, like always. The team could use a little holiday spirit right now, and so could you." Tony hesitated, knowing she was right, but unable to shake the unease. "I don't know if I'm ready to host another big event. It just doesn't feel right." Before Pepper could respond, the door burst open again, this time with Happy Hogan striding in, arms full of Christmas decorations, an inflatable Santa Claus, tinsel, and a tangled string of lights. "Stark, what's this I hear about no party?" Happy said, already starting to string the lights around the lab without waiting for an answer. "You throw the best Christmas party in New York. You can't just back out now." Tony groaned, spinning in his chair. "Happy, I didn't say no party, I just said." "You're thinking about no party," Happy interrupted, shaking his head as he untangled the lights. "And that's not happening. This place needs some holiday cheer." Tony looked between Pepper and Happy, both of them clearly unwilling to let him cancel the event. He opened his mouth to argue when something completely unexpected happened. His console lit up with a flashing notification. "Incoming transmission from the North Pole." Tony blinked, glancing at the screen. "Okay, this has to be a prank." He tapped the notification, and to his shock, a holographic image of Santa Claus materialized in the center of the room. Santa looked far from his usual jolly self. His expression was serious, almost desperate. "Tony Stark," Santa began, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need your help." Tony stood slowly, unable to believe what he was seeing. "Santa Claus, this is a joke, right? Thor messing with me." Santa shook his head, his expression grim. "No joke. My workshop is in crisis and Christmas is in jeopardy." Tony folded his arms, glancing back at Pepper and Happy, who were equally stunned. "You're telling me Christmas is in trouble and you need me to fix it?" Santa nodded, his tone serious. "The workshop systems have broken down completely. The power grid is fried, the toy assembly lines are malfunctioning, and our communication network is down. If I don't get everything back online soon, I won't be able to deliver presents to the children of the world. I need someone with your expertise. Tony raised an eyebrow, his skepticism wavering. You want me to fix Santa's workshop? Yes, Santa replied. The technology we've used has evolved over centuries, but it's reached a point where even my elves can't repair it. I've watched your work, Tony. You're the only one who can help. Tony rubbed his chin. The thought of rebuilding Santa's workshop both intriguing and absurd, but the sincerity in Santa's voice, along with the idea of saving Christmas, sparked something in him. All right, Santa, Tony said, with a small grin. I'll help you, but you owe me big for this. Santa's eyes lit up with relief and a smile returned to his face. You have no idea how much this means, Tony. I'll send you the coordinates. There's no time to waste. As the hologram faded, Tony looked at Pepper and Happy, both of whom were still staring at where Santa had stood moments before. I guess I'm going to the North Pole, Tony said, already turning back to his console to suit up. Pepper smiled. Well, at least that's something you don't do every year. Within the hour, Tony had assembled the Avengers. They gathered in the common room of Stark Tower, each of them looking somewhat skeptical, but ready for whatever mission Tony was about to throw at them. So let me get this straight, Steve Rogers said, arms crossed. Santa Claus needs our help because his workshop broke down. Tony nodded, pulling up the schematics Santa had sent him. That's right, his power grid's shot, the toy assembly lines are malfunctioning, and if we don't fix it, Christmas is canceled. The whole system's a mess. Natasha Romanoff raised an eyebrow, leaning back in her chair. And we're the repair crew? Thor laughed heartily. Ah, Christmas is an important Midgardian holiday. I would be honored to assist Santa Claus. Bruce Banner, ever the pragmatist, looked thoughtful. What kind of technology are we talking about? I didn't think Santa's workshop would need a power grid. Tony pulled up the data on his holographic display. Turns out Santa's been upgrading his systems for centuries. It's a mix of magic and tech, and now the whole thing's fried. We need to get the power back online, repair the toy assembly lines, and fix the sleigh's navigation systems. It's all state-of-the-art, but it's overloaded. Steve exchanged glances with the others. Well, if Christmas is in danger, I guess we don't have much choice. Natasha smirked. Wouldn't be the strangest thing we've done. Within the hour, the Avengers were aboard the Quinjet, cutting through the icy winds of the Arctic as they approached the North Pole. The landscape below them was a vast expanse of snow and ice, but as they neared their destination, they saw the sprawling compound that was Santa's workshop. From the sky, the workshop looked like something out of a fairy tale, massive, with rows of buildings stretching across the snow-covered plains. But something was wrong. There was no festive glow, no movement of elves bustling about. Instead, smoke rose from several areas, and Tony could see the telltale sparks of malfunctioning machinery. Looks like we've got a lot of work to do, Tony muttered, as he guided the Quinjet toward the landing pad near the main entrance. As the Avengers stepped off the jet, they were greeted by Santa himself and his head elf Bernard. Santa, still wearing his red suit, but now with a look of stress on his face, approached them quickly. "Thank you for coming," Santa said, his voice full of relief. "We're running out of time. Christmas Eve is tomorrow night, and we're not even close to being ready." Tony surveyed the area, his eyes quickly taking in the scope of the damage. What happened? Santa sighed. "We've been pushing the systems too hard for years. The toy demand has increased and we tried to upgrade, but the power grid couldn't handle it. The toy assembly lines are jammed, the navigation system for the sleigh went offline, and the entire place is in chaos. I've got all my elves working, but we need more than just repairs. We need a complete overhaul." Tony nodded, already formulating a plan. All right, here's what we're gonna do. Bruce, I need you on the power core. Natasha, you're with me on the assembly lines. Thor, Steve, you two are gonna help with the sleigh's navigation system. We've got less than 24 hours to get this place running again. The team sprang into action. Tony and Natasha headed straight for the assembly lines, which were massive conveyor belts stretching across the workshop floor, loaded with half-finished toys. The lines had completely jammed, with gears grinding and sparks flying. "This is worse than I thought," Tony muttered, pulling out his tools and beginning to dismantle the damaged components. "We're going to need to replace these circuits and rewire the whole system." Natasha worked beside him, clearing the debris and guiding the elves as they brought in replacement parts. "Think we'll make it in time?" "We don't have a choice," Tony replied, his hands moving swiftly as he reconnected wires. "I'll work faster." Meanwhile, Bruce was in the heart of the workshop, where the main power core had short-circuited. It was a tangled mess of wires, outdated generators, and burnt-out components. With the help of Bernard and a team of elves, Bruce began installing arc reactor technology to replace the failing power grid. "It's going to take time for the reactor to fully integrate with your systems," Bruce said, carefully calibrating the new power core. "But once it's up, it'll be more stable than anything you've used before." Across the workshop, Steve and Thor were working on the sleigh. The navigation system had completely shut down, leaving Santa without a way to guide the reindeer through the skies. Thor, who had a natural affinity for flight, worked on reattaching the control mechanisms, while Steve checked the software. "It's almost like this thing is enchanted," Steve said, glancing at Thor. "How does Santa keep track of everything?" Thor laughed, lifting a large piece of equipment with ease. "The magic of Christmas is strong, my friend, but even magic needs a bit of maintenance." Hours passed, and slowly but surely, the workshop began to hum back to life. The toy assembly lines were repaired, the power grid was fully operational, and the sleigh's navigation system was up and running. As the final touches were made, Tony stood back, watching the workshop return to its former glory. The elves worked tirelessly to catch up on toy production, and the cheerful sounds of the workshop filled the air once more. "Looks like we did it," Tony said, a small smile on his face, as he watched the conveyor belts move smoothly again. Santa approached, his face beaming with gratitude. "Tony, you've saved Christmas. I can't thank you enough." Tony, though exhausted, felt a warmth he hadn't expected. "Just doing my job, Santa." With the workshop fully repaired and the toys ready to be loaded onto the sleigh, Christmas Eve arrived in full swing. Santa, now fully back in his element, donned his red coat and hat, preparing for his annual journey around the world. The Avengers stood nearby, watching as the elves loaded the final gifts onto the sleigh. The air was filled with excitement and relief. The disaster had been averted, and Christmas was saved. Santa, now fully in his element, approached Tony, a warm smile on his face. "Tony, I cannot thank you enough. Because of you, millions of children will wake up to the magic of Christmas tomorrow." Tony, feeling an unexpected sense of pride, shrugged. "Hey, just doing my job. Gotta say, this was a little outside the usual save the world stuff, though." Santa chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Indeed, but you went above and beyond. Now, there's one last thing I'd like to offer you. How would you feel about coming along for the ride, delivering the gifts?" Tony blinked, taken aback. "Wait, me? With you? You're serious?" Santa nodded. "Very serious. It's not every day someone gets the chance to fly with Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, and I could use a co-pilot. What do you say?" Tony hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the Avengers. He wasn't one to turn down a thrilling ride, but this felt different. It wasn't just about the excitement, it was about the magic of Christmas, something he hadn't fully embraced in years. Steve Rogers, sensing Tony's hesitation, stepped forward with a grin. "You should go, Tony. You've earned it." Natasha smirked. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Who else can say they've flown with Santa?" Thor clapped Tony on the back. "Go, Stark. It will be a tale for the ages." Bruce, usually the quieter voice of reason, nodded in agreement. Besides, who else could handle navigating Christmas Eve traffic in the skies? Tony looked around at his friends, his heart warmed by their encouragement. A slow smile spread across his face as he turned back to Santa. "All right, Claus, let's do this." Santa grinned, gesturing to his sleigh. "Then hop in." But Tony had other plans. "Actually, I've got my own ride," he said with a smirk, activating his Iron Man suit. The familiar sound of his thrusters filled the air as the armor wrapped around him, gleaming in the soft glow of the North Pole lights. "I'll fly alongside you." Santa's sleigh lifted off the snowy ground, and Tony took off next to him, soaring into the night sky. The cold Arctic air whipped around them as they climbed higher, the stars twinkling above like tiny Christmas lights. Tony flew effortlessly beside the sleigh, his arc reactor pulsing with energy, lighting up the night as Santa's reindeer dashed ahead. For the first time in a long while, Tony felt a sense of childlike wonder as they soared over snow-covered towns and glittering cities. He could see the magic of Christmas unfolding below. Homes were decorated with glowing lights, families were gathered by their trees, and the spirit of the season filled the air. Flying next to Santa, Tony realized how much he had needed this. The weight of the past few months, the fear, the doubt, seemed to melt away. It wasn't about saving the world or throwing the biggest party. It was about something deeper, something he had forgotten along the way. The joy of giving, of being part of something bigger than himself. As they approached their final destination, Santa turned to Tony with a warm smile. "Thank you, Tony. You've done more than just fix my workshop. You've reminded me why we do this every year." Tony grinned. "I think I needed the reminder too." They descended slowly, the North Pole shimmering below, and landed back at the workshop. The Avengers were waiting, watching as Tony touched down next to Santa's sleigh. Santa hopped out, brushing snow from his coat. "Now, Tony, I suggest you get some rest, or better yet," Santa's eyes twinkled mischievously. "Go to that party you almost forgot about." Tony blinked. The party. He had been so caught up in saving Christmas, he'd nearly forgotten about his own Christmas party. A laugh escaped him, shaking his head. "You're right. I've got a party to get to." Santa placed a hand on Tony's shoulder. "Enjoy yourself tonight, Tony. You've done all you could." With a final nod and a wink, Santa climbed back into his sleigh, and with a crack of the reins, took off into the night sky. Tony stood for a moment watching the sleigh disappear into the stars, a new lightness in his chest. He had just saved Christmas, and now it was time to celebrate. Back at Stark Tower, the Avengers gathered for the Christmas party, which had been quickly pulled together at the last minute. The decorations were up, the tree sparkled with lights, and guests filled the spacious tower. Music played, laughter echoed, and the festive spirit had taken over. Tony arrived still in his Iron Man suit, much to the amusement of his guests. He deactivated the armor, stepping out with a smile that hadn't graced his face in a long time. Pepper, who had worked tirelessly with Happy to prepare the party, greeted him with a raised eyebrow. "I thought you weren't in the party mood," she said with a smirk. Tony grinned, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "Changed my mind. Let's make this one to remember. As the night continued, Tony moved around the room, exchanging laughs with his friends and fellow Avengers. But as the party began to wind down, Tony noticed something strange. Under the massive Christmas tree in the center of the room, there were presents. Not just any presents, beautifully wrapped gifts with elegant tags addressed to each of his friends. Curious, Tony approached the tree and called out to the group, "Hey guys, looks like we've got a special delivery here." The Avengers gathered around as Tony handed out the gifts. Steve Rogers unwrapped his first, revealing a rare World War II artifact he had been searching for years. It was a picture of him and Bucky during the war. His eyes widened in disbelief as he held it, shaking his head with a grin. Natasha opened hers next, finding an encrypted device containing long-lost information about her past. She held it carefully, her expression softening. "I don't even know what to say." Bruce received a specialized tool designed to help him better control his transformations, something that brought a look of gratitude to his face. This is perfect. For Thor, there was a beautifully crafted replica of Mjolnir, created with a blend of Asgardian and Earth metals. He laughed heartily as he lifted it. A fine gift indeed. Finally, Tony reached for his own gift. Inside was a sleek handcrafted arc reactor, a more advanced design than his own, enhanced with a touch of Christmas magic. Attached was a note, written in elegant script, to Tony for saving Christmas. Santa. Tony chuckled, shaking his head as he held the arc reactor. "Well, I'll be damned." The Avengers gathered around, each of them feeling the magic of the night, and Tony couldn't help but feel something shift in him. The weight he had been carrying was gone, replaced by a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. As the fire crackled in the background, Tony raised his glass to his friends. "Merry Christmas, everyone." And for the first time in a long while, Tony Stark truly felt the spirit of Christmas.